Well, today we have Taylor Jones at a whiteboard in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Um, Taylor, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about kind of how Whiteboard got started, some kind of the underlining mission and vision of what you guys are doing.
Sure.
Part of our audience, well, actually, a large majority of them are interested in a faith and work component. And so, how does God's work connect to our work? Even though we may not be full time vocational on mission in like a missionary or pastor or those type of
Sure.
things, we believe that gospel has implications in all of our work. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about your company and your organization. Tell us a little bit about Whiteboard, how you guys got started, and where you guys are now.
Sure. So Whiteboard was an idea birthed out of a couple of friends who were roommates in college at a faith-based university, and we gathered together and really became friends. Faith was a huge part of that friendship. We gathered for ministry from various aspects. Had a really dynamic group of friends. PJ, you were a part of that friend
Yep,
group,
yep,
obviously, because you and I
yep.
were literally roommates. So we kind of know that part of the story. But Whiteboard was the culmination of after Eric, who's my business partner, co-founder of Whiteboard. We had done some work at the Lee University there with the chapel program. We were trying to just sort of help bring some new life and freshness to what was kind of a stagnant program in a sense at the time, and just become a little bit stale. And we said, hey, can we bring some students into this process? And Eric and myself, we had ministry volunteer experience, but no real like production high level thing. And so we rallied some friends, and this was sort of after we'd done a couple of things in this friend group through ministry together, and started participating there. To make a long story short, in that room is where we really developed this creative synergy for the execution of ideas, which is really critical for anything creative, not just to be able to dream it, but to be able to implement it.
Yeah.
So in that room, over 2.5 years, we cultivated this working synergy of being able to dream up an idea, really think critically about it, and then bring it into life. And when we graduated, we kind of went sort of separate ways, but really missed that creative synergy that had developed, and thought that there was some possibilities of really starting an organization on the side to keep our friends being creative together
Yeah, yeah.
in our daily lives, right? So now we're 3.5 years later with 12 people on the team full time,
Wow.
and really just so the sort of the gospel creative part of who we are is at the core. It was from the foundation, and we're called Whiteboard because there was a whiteboard in the office of Pastor Harper, where all these meetings would happen at Lee.
Yeah.
That we would work around and flesh out our ideas and argue and yell and scream at each other, and all the things we do in great creative synergy. So so I mean that's how we started, and really we came together with a gospel cause and have carried that forward. Our mission statement is we empower visionaries to lead meaningful brands, and sort of the sub piece of that is we really believe in expanding the kingdom and the common good through everything that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And every project and client we approach, we try to find the good to believe in the midst of the work that we're doing, and use that as our motivation to drive it forward.
That's awesome, man. That's really exciting. Man, 3.5 years having 12 members on your team, and thanks for kind of sharing how you kind of carry out the gospel implications on
Sure.
the things that you're producing. But more also, I would love to hear from an internal staff position, with you and Eric kind of being the spearhead, the go-to guys, the
Sure.
leaders. For you personally, leading an organization, how does the gospel play into your leadership style, your skills, things you've learned, things you've failed at and had to repent of, and what has been that process that you've been learning as a leader, as a gospel-centered leader, to lead your team?
Sure. So I think my first response is that I imagine as somebody, I've listened to interviews with people before talking about similar topics, and it can feel like what they're saying makes it easy. But I'll be first to say that it's really hard. It's hard to lead with grace, and it's hard to empower rather than dictate. And it's hard to challenge a team to grow instead of being frustrated when things don't come together exactly the way that you plan for them to come together. So it's not perfect. I mean, there's a host of things that I can look back on and say, you know, I would do this differently and this differently and this differently and this differently and this differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the most important thing is to keep your eyes on the future, do better next time. But so really, I think principles of grace, but also principles of accountability, which are two things that relate to the gospel, are what we try to embody as leaders. You know, Eric and I work really hard to make sure that we never claim to have more experience than we have, and that we never try to take ourselves too seriously because we are young. That doesn't mean we're not capable of being effective. It just means that there are people out there that have a lot more life experience that we need to be cautious of as we engage. So, you know, with our team, we try to be constructive and clear and empowering, and lead with grace, and always carry an attitude of, you know, empathy as we engage our team. Realize that life is bigger than a job, and that people have cares deeper than just what they're doing at work. The other side of that, you know, I actually sat down for lunch with a guy a couple of weeks ago, and he asked me. He works for a secular organization, which we're not labeled a Christian organization.
Yeah.
We're definitely a for-profit creative agency, but definitely far more, sort of more common. I think it was an accounting firm is who he worked for, and he said, like, you know, it obviously seems to me like your team are mostly people of faith, and how do you feel like that either interferes or contributes to your work? Like, he asked me kind of point blank, how do you embody that? And I said, you know, what we do in creative work, there's a lot of ambiguity, it can seem like. But the one thing that I think, being a person of faith in the Creator, is that I have the capacity to believe in something bigger than me.
Yeah.
Something that created me, something that creates the good in the world around me. And when I engage a new client who's doing something, because everybody's doing something.
Yeah.
We have a propensity to be able to find the core thing and believe in it. Mm-hmm. The thing that's bigger than the owner, the thing that's bigger than their team, the thing that's it's impactful, you know. And so even in organizations whose mission isn't written to provide a cultural good, there's always some cause of cultural good for why the organization was established.
That's good.
So being of faith, being of gospel, being of a person of belief, we can engage with a deeper understanding and be able to seek out the pieces of the puzzle, the pieces of their narrative, the pieces of their story that specifically relate to the bigger thing.
Yeah.
And we believe in that. We empower our team by communicating that context so that every action that's taken, every task that's assigned, every, you know, change or client request or frustrating situation is filtered back through this overall belief in something bigger about who that client, who that organization is, and what they're doing.
Yeah. No, man, that's incredible. That's incredible. I'm going to throw another question out that just kind of rolled in my mind based on this, because I know you guys are doing a lot, and I mean, it's just even encouraging to hear where your heart is, and kind of the behind the scenes, what's motivating and navigating, and how you come up with those issues. Because I understand, man, when you're trying to make a sale, like it's difficult not to make yourself look better than what you really are, and things like that. But more so because I know how busy you guys are. How do you navigate living a healthy life? You know, from the relationship with your wife to friends to taking care of yourself to, you know, that big action item list you got rolling that seems to get bigger more than it does smaller.
Sure.
How do you manage all of that?
That's tough.
Yeah.
So I think in the first place, I was actually talking to my wife about this last night. You know, I think one of the things that, I'm not going to call myself successful, so don't misunderstand me, but I'll say the thing that separates people who accomplish what they set out to accomplish from those who don't, the things that they care about are different from the things that the average person cares about. So when it comes to family and relationship and balance, you know, sort of society, culture will tell us that there are these normal things that every person should care about, every person should do, that every person should be involved in. And one of the things that gets difficult is when those become distractions from the thing that you are trying to do, that you feel is either you're led to do or is your decision to do. And so when it comes to relationship and wife and friendship, I think you have to put yourself among friends who are like-minded, who understand that you're on a path to something different from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I'm not on a path to maintain. That's not my goal. My path is to create new things, and that means that I go through things that some people would consider a sacrifice, right? Less time spent recreating. I don't take long walks in the park per se, because that's not what brings me fulfillment.
Right.
What brings me fulfillment is the accomplishment and the seeing of the things that we do come to life.
Yeah.
Some people criticize that. Some people say, you're not spending enough time doing this other thing. You're not spending enough time with your family. Well, you don't know that my family comes to the office and spends time with me and we work together. I mean, I have a picture on my computer where I was holding Ella, right?
Yeah.
This kid in my arm, and she's sleeping, and I'm drawing wireframes on the whiteboard in the office. So, some people might say that's a poor decision, but I say, why?
Yeah.
She's in the environment where we're trying to impact the world in a greater way instead of sitting at home kind of just going on with life.
Yeah.
So it's tough, but I think the hard thing to understand is that the harder part of it is that people who aren't on that same path don't understand it. It's not that they're lesser, it's just they're not on the same pathway, and that's what makes it hard.
No, that's good, man. That's good. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today, bro.
Sure.
I really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.